Hello, my fellow wealth warriors and succession strategists. Welcome back to the Sassy Successionist, where we dive deep into the messy, magnificent world of family wealth and succession planning. I'm your host, Uyai, and today I'm switching it up. Grab your pearls, get your blazers, because we're heading over to Downton Abbey. Yes, it's a period drama. Yes, it's likely a simplification of how life really was in the first half of the 20th century for the aristocratic class. But what can I say? We're allowed to have our escapist shows after all. I didn't start the series when it first came out, but I really enjoyed catching up with all the happenings a few years ago. Now, why would I be discussing Downton Abbey on a podcast about succession planning? Because if you've ever dealt with a multi-generational family business, navigated the choppy waters of inheritance disputes, or tried to explain entailment, then Downton Abbey isn't just entertainment. It's a masterclass in what not to do in succession planning. So, grab your Earl Grey, settle in, and let's unpack the Crawley family succession saga. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you will never look at Downton Abbey the same way again, and I'll have you rushing off to watch the latest movie that's going to be out in cinemas just right now. Let's start with the proverbial elephant in the English country estate, the entailment. For those who haven't binged the Downton Abbey series or need a refresher, the Crawley family's entire fortune and estate is tied up in an entail that passes everything to the nearest male relative. This means daughters get nothing, and when there's no direct male heir, it goes to some distant cousin who's probably never even seen the estate. Yikes. Now, in our modern world, we don't always have formal entailments quite like this, but oh boy, do we have their spiritual successors. I've seen family constitutions, trust documents, and succession plans that are just as rigid and just as destructive. You know what I'm talking about. These ironclad structures that made perfect sense when grandfather set them up in 1952, but now feel like trying to run a tech startup with a telegraph. They just don't fit our modern world, and they can be hard to wriggle out of. The Crawley entailment creates the central tension of the entire series. To give you a sense of the family, here's a brief introduction. You have the Dowager Countess Violet Crawley, aka Grandmama, aka the family matriarch. She's my absolute favorite character, by the way, and Maggie Smith played her so well. Then, you have Robert Crawley, current Earl of Grantham, and his lovely American wife, Cora. They have 3 capable daughters, Mary, Edith, and Sybil, who know the estate better than any outsider ever could, but they're legally barred from inheriting due to the entailment because they are girls. Sound familiar? How many family businesses have we seen where the most capable family members are sidelined because of outdated succession rules? Here's the kicker. Robert Crawley, the current Earl, spends the entire series basically playing defense against his own succession plan. He's constantly trying to work around a system that he knows is flawed, but he feels powerless to change. That's what I call succession Stockholm syndrome, when families become so attached to dysfunctional structures that they defend them even when those structures are destroying them. What's the lesson here? Flexibility is not a dirty word in succession planning. Your succession plan really should serve your family and your values and not the other way around. Ideally, it should be flexible enough to allow for some change with each generation. Now, I want to introduce another character, Matthew Crawley. Matthew is a distant cousin, a middle-class lawyer, and probably the most reluctant heir in television history. Here's a guy who literally does not want the Downton Abbey inheritance deal, doesn't understand the business of running an estate, and frankly, seemed like he would rather be anywhere else when he was first introduced into the series. This is succession planning gold, my dear listeners, because it highlights one of the biggest mistakes I see families make, assuming that being next in line means wanting the responsibility. Matthew's initial resistance isn't just about class differences or personal preference. It's about being thrust into a role he never asked for and isn't prepared for. The Crawley family doesn't handle this well at the beginning. Instead of proper onboarding, mentoring, and gradual integration like we would do today, they basically throw Matthew into the deep end and hope he doesn't drown. The current Earl oscillates between patronizing lectures and passive-aggressive sighs. The staff treats him like an outsider. And don't even get me started on the Dowager Countess's cutting remarks. In one of my favorite scenes, Matthew discusses with the family at dinner how he plans to split his responsibilities. He would work weekdays at his day job as a lawyer and run the estate during the weekend. Grandmama then asks, What is a weekend? The key to understanding this scene is that the aristocracy back then didn't work day jobs. There was no need for a weekend to relax from the week's work because they didn't work. This showed the class divide immediately. But here's what's brilliant about Matthew's arc in Downton Abbey. He actually becomes a competent estate manager, but only after he stops trying to fit into someone else's vision and starts bringing his own skills to the table. His legal background helps him understand contracts and negotiations. His middle-class sensibilities help him to connect with the tenant farmers in ways the aristocratic Crawleys never really could. The real tragedy in Downton Abbey isn't that Matthew dies, although that's super devastating. It's that it takes the family so long to recognize and leverage his unique strengths. How many family businesses lose talented successors because they're too busy trying to clone the founder instead of developing the next generation's individual talents? Now, let's talk about Lady Mary, because she is the poster child for the wrong gender, right skills succession dilemma. Lady Mary is my second favorite character, after Grandmama, of course. From day one, Mary understands Downton better than anyone. She knows the tenants, she understands the economics, she has the political savvy to navigate changing times, and she's very good friends with the butler, Mr. Carson, who has been there from time immemorial. She's a first daughter through and through, and that's a character trait I can relate to. She's basically the perfect heir, except for that pesky detail about being a woman. Mary's character arc is fascinating from a succession planning perspective because she refuses to be sidelined. Even though she can't officially inherit, she positions herself as the estate's de facto strategic advisor. She is the one pushing for modernization, she's the one thinking about long-term sustainability, and she's the one who actually understands what needs to change to survive. In one of the associated Downton Abbey movies, she had to take her father up to their attic and physically show her father the leaking roof of their beloved home to really drive home the need for change. They wouldn't have been able to afford to fix it otherwise due to the financial constraints that the estate found itself in. Once she did that, however, she got permission for Downton Abbey to be used as a prime location for a film from her father. But here's where it gets messy, and where it becomes incredibly relevant to modern families. Mary's competence threatens people around her. Her father occasionally feels undermined, and Matthew sometimes feels pressured. There are people who seem to think she shouldn't be as forward as she is. She's caught in that impossible position of being essential to the operation, but not officially recognized for her contributions. Thankfully, Grandmama was there to encourage her and allow her to show her innate strength. This dynamic shows up constantly in family businesses today. You've got capable daughters or daughters-in-law who are marginalized by formal succession plans that favor sons, regardless of competence. Believe it or not, these still exist in many families around the world. You've got siblings who are excluded from leadership roles because of birth order or gender, even though they might be the most qualified candidates. The Downton writers eventually gave Lady Mary her due. She becomes the estate's driving force after Matthew's death and essentially runs the place. I was so glad to see her grow into the preserver of Downton Abbey. Grandmama passed on a lot of good common sense, some snark, as well as a fierce love for their home. Good succession planning identifies and develops talent wherever it exists, not just where tradition says it should be. And I think Grandmama really saw a shining light in Lady Mary. If you have a kid under 15 or you're a fan of Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know that we don't talk about Bruno. But there is a lot to say about Tom Branson. Here's a guy who starts as the family chauffeur, marries the youngest daughter, Sybil, and gradually becomes one of the estate's most valuable thinkers. Tom's integration into the Crawley family can be seen as a masterclass in how to successfully onboard non-family talent. Initially, everyone, and I mean everyone, sees Tom as an outsider who doesn't belong. He's Irish, he's working class, he has very radical political views, and he certainly doesn't understand the nuances of the aristocratic class or estate management. But Sybil sees something in him, and more importantly, Tom is willing to learn and adapt. What makes Tom's story so compelling is that he doesn't just assimilate into the existing culture, he challenges it and makes it better. His political awareness helps the family navigate challenging social dynamics. His outsider perspective helps them see problems that insiders have become blind to. And his genuine respect for the estate's mission, eventually, combined with his willingness to question outdated practices, makes him incredibly valuable. By the end of the series, Tom has really become one of Robert's most trusted advisors and Mary's key partner in running the estate. He's proof that sometimes the best successors aren't the ones who inherit the role, but the ones who earn it. And they don't have to be necessarily blood relatives of the original founding family. This is crucial for modern family businesses. Some of your best leadership talent might come from unexpected places: spouses who marry into the family, key employees who demonstrate exceptional commitment, or even family members who initially seemed uninterested in the business. The key is being open to recognizing and developing talent wherever it emerges. We need to talk about poor Edith because her story illustrates another crucial succession planning principle. Never write off the spare heir. Edith starts the series as the overlooked middle daughter, the one who's neither as beautiful as Mary nor as spirited as Sybil. She's treated as an afterthought by her family, and frankly by the writers for the first few seasons. But Edith's character development is actually the most impressive in the series. After an unfortunate incident in her love life, she is speaking with Grandmama about what she might do next. Edith suggested gardening, and Grandmama quips that she can't be that desperate. This is one scene where I disagree with Grandmama, by the way. While Mary is focused on the estate and Sybil is focused on social causes, Edith finds her way and quietly builds her own media empire. She starts writing for newspapers, eventually becomes an editor, and creates an independent source of wealth and influence. Edith's success comes precisely because she's not the primary heir. She has the freedom to experiment, to take risks, and to build something entirely new. She's not constrained by expectations about maintaining tradition or preserving the status quo. This is incredibly relevant for succession planning. We often focus so much attention on grooming the obvious successor that we neglect other family members who might have different but equally valuable skills. Some of the most successful family business transitions I've seen have involved the so-called spare heirs, who brought fresh perspectives and new capabilities to established enterprises. The lesson? Don't put all your succession eggs in one basket. Develop multiple family members for different roles, and be open to the possibility that your best successor might not be the one you initially expected. One of the most realistic aspects of Downton Abbey's succession story is that meaningful change only happens during crisis. The estate modernizes when they're facing bankruptcy. Leadership structures evolve when key people die or leave. New opportunities emerge when old systems collapse. This crisis-driven change is unfortunately typical of many family businesses, even today. We resist necessary adaptations until we're forced to make them, often at great cost and under enormous pressure. The Crawleys could have avoided many of their problems if they'd been more proactive about succession planning instead of reactive. Think about the financial crisis storyline where Robert loses a significant portion of the family's wealth through bad investments. Instead of this becoming a learning moment about learning about financial governance and risk, it becomes a crisis that nearly destroys the estate. Better financial controls and succession planning could have prevented or minimized this disaster. Thankfully, we do have wealth managers and other teams available today to family offices to help navigate this. The point is that succession planning isn't just about who takes over and when. It's about building systems and structures that can weather these changes and challenges. Crisis shouldn't be your only succession planning strategy. So what can we, as modern wealth management and succession planning professionals, learn from the Crawley family's century-long saga? First, rigid succession structures are brittle succession structures. The world changes, families change, and your succession plan needs to be able to adapt. Build in flexibility and regular review processes. Second, competence should always work over tradition. The best heir isn't always the obvious heir. Be willing to recognize and develop talent wherever it exists in your family system. Third, communication is everything. Many of Downton's succession problems could have been avoided with better family communication. Regular family meetings, clear role definitions, and open discussions about expectations can prevent years of resentment and conflict. You don't have to be a wealthy family controlling billions of dollars or an aristocratic family to start doing this today. Fourth, outside perspectives are invaluable. Tom Branson became one of the estate's most valuable contributors precisely because he brought a fresh viewpoint to everything at Downton Abbey. Don't be afraid to include non-family members in your succession planning discussions. And finally, please remember that succession planning is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. It doesn't live in a document that's kind of set in stone forever. The Crawley story unfolds over decades with multiple transitions, changing circumstances, and evolving family dynamics. Your succession plan can and should be equally dynamic. Before we wrap up, I want you to think about your own family or the families you advise. What elements of the Downton Abbey succession saga sound familiar? Are there rigid structures that no longer serve your family's best interests? Are there capable family members who are being overlooked because of traditional assumptions? Are there crisis points that could be avoided with better planning? More importantly, what would your family's entailment in double quotes look like if you wrote it today? What values and principles and structures would you put in place to ensure smooth transitions across generations? Remember, you're not just building for the next 10 years. You want to think about the next 100 years. And speaking of succession planning, if today's discussion has you thinking about your own family's wealth transition challenges, I'd love to help. I sometimes work with family offices and high net worth individuals to develop comprehensive governance strategies that actually work in the real world, not on paper. My approach combines the technical expertise you need with the family dynamics insight you can't afford to ignore. Let's be honest, succession planning isn't only about legal documents and tax strategies, although those are very important and we cannot do our work without our tax and legal partners. It's really about helping families navigate complex relationships, competing interests, changing circumstances while preserving both wealth and family harmony. For families who need this, I offer customized governance consulting that addresses everything from family constitution to next-gen leadership training and sometimes even conflict resolution. Whether you're dealing with a reluctant heir like Matthew Crawley, an overlooked talent like Lady Mary, or an outsider integration challenge like Tom Branson, I can help you develop strategies that work for your unique family situation. Don't let your family succession story become a cautionary tale. Let's work together to create a plan that serves you. You can find all my contact information in the show notes or reach out through my website. I'd love to chat about how we can help your family. Thanks for joining me on today's journey to Downton Abbey, my fellow succession strategists. Remember, good succession planning isn't about preserving the past. It's about building the future for the next 100 years.